Welcome to the first episode of SmartPath Conversations. I'm Abigail, and today we're diving into the story behind SmartPath, a platform that's set to change the home education landscape. We have a very special episode lined up featuring the co-founders of SmartPath, Jonathan Chiswick and Robert Gamble. Jonathan, the CEO and co-founder of SmartPath, is a homeschooling parent, an experienced tech leader who has built and led growth teams at multiple successful startups, giving him firsthand insights into the challenges faced by most modern homeschool families. Robert, the COO and co-founder of SmartPath, is a business scaling expert with a background in leading rapid growth at companies like Bird and Gorillas. Today, we'll explore their personal journeys, the challenges they faced, and the vision for what's driving this exciting new venture. Jonathan, Robert, thank you so much for joining me today. Let's get started by getting to know you both a little better. So, Jonathan, you've been a homeschooling parent yourself, which gives you a unique perspective on the challenge families face. Can you tell us a little bit more about your homeschooling journey?
Yeah, absolutely. So excited to be here and tell everyone a little bit about SmartPath. We're really excited about what we've got started. My journey with homeschooling, so my family's journey with homeschooling, started like a lot of people's, where it was like not even a consideration, right? So when my wife and I started having children, that like many Americans, the default was you just find a good school district, get the house there, and your kids will go to school. That's what we did growing up. Like, why would it be any different? And so when we started having children, we were in Texas. That worked out. And then we moved to the Bay Area, and the school quality versus house pricing ratio is a little different there. So we made a trade-off and sent the kids to a small private school. And great, except that's not free. And so when we moved back to Austin several years ago, part of that reasoning was, well, let's move them back into public schools, into a good school district, and have that same experience. And so the big difference when we came back to Texas was things had changed. The experience in the public schools was just not what it was when we had left. So, between the academics and the toxic socialization that was going on with our younger two kids, it just seemed like we needed to do something different. So at that point, we looked at homeschooling really briefly, and it just seemed overwhelming. Like, yeah, it looks like there's something more going on there, but we really need to make a decision fast. Let's just suck it up and we'll pay for private school. So we did that. Partway through the first year, realized, I'm not really sure the academics are all that much better, right? Except now we're paying for this. Fortunately, my wife had continued to investigate what's going on with, home education and schooling outside of public and private schools, and said, hey, I think this homeschooling thing has changed a lot since we were in high school. We can make this work. Like, I think this is actually a much better situation for our kids. They're going to, have the ability to learn a lot more. The flexibility is massive to enable family activities and other interests that the kids have. And there's plenty of socialization opportunities. There's, local homeschool groups, there's co-ops, and we have our neighborhood play groups. Like, there are plenty of chances to meet and interact with kids. So we said, okay, I think there's something here. Let's try it. And that was a few years back, and we've been, doing the home education route ever since. And the kids have been really happy. They're learning a lot. It's working out for us. So, all the benefits that we thought going in, like, I don't want to say that it was without its challenges, right? But any raising teenagers is always going to have challenges. But I think given the situation, it's certainly the best option for them. And they're learning a lot. They're excited about what they're learning, about going to class. They're able to dive into personal interests and do things. They're in the middle of the week. They're able to, go horseback riding and take lessons during the middle of the day when, the lessons aren't crowded, because that's the time when most public school kids are going in the evenings and the weekends. We don't have to. We can do those extracurricular activities when they're less crowded. So it's been a fun time, and we're excited that we got to do it, and glad we did.
Wow, yeah, it sounds like it's been quite a journey going from public school, then private school, and homeschooling now, but it's great that everyone's happy and really enjoying the setup.
Yeah, we've learned a lot through the process. So that's part of, we'll get into it, as part of why we started SmartPath, was to, help other parents that are kind of going through that same situation.
Absolutely. Thank you. And so, Robert, can you share a little bit more about your connection to SmartPath? How did you become so passionate about education?
Yeah, so I grew up in the Bay Area, and growing up with a learning disability through the public education system there was actually something that was extremely challenging. So the fact that I've been able to, go to college, have a great career after that, basically is by accident, if I think about it, given how little support there was for kids with learning disabilities growing up. And that's considering that I actually went to a public school district that had pretty good resources relative to what most public school systems in the country have. And so for me, I've for a very long time understood that there is this gap, specifically for kids who, aren't going through a typical learning path or learning trajectory. Um, but I've also been largely kind of more concerned over the past couple of years, looking at the actual performance of public schools in terms of preparing kids for the real world after high school. If we look at some of the statistics around how kids are performing, so 31% of eighth grade, only 31% of eighth graders are meeting the national standards for literacy in the United States. And so when I see a statistic like that, that's deeply troubling. And so for me, my personal connection to the need for something, for a solution, is that I grew up in a, I had the best case scenario for a kid with a learning disability, and I still felt it fell short in terms of feeling supported. And then then you see that we're now failing kind of all kids for the most part, and that's highly problematic. And so for me, I think it's hard to see that and then not feel compelled to step in and try and build a business that can help turn around those outcomes for kids and make sure that kids are getting a solid education, that parents have, the opportunity to go seek better outcomes for their kids. I think that's what's really attractive about homeschooling for me personally, is that as a parent, you can actually go shop around for the best solution for your kid. You can build a curriculum that's highly customized. It's based off of their interests. I know for me, when I was growing up, I had a really hard time sitting still if I was learning about a topic that wasn't interested in. For a little kid with ADHD, it's really hard to, get excited about learning about, say genetics. And if you're not interested in peas, right? Like that's how, like they talk about the experiments done with peas to teach genetics. Well, I was more interested in learning about, I don't know, horses, right? And so the cool thing with homeschooling is that you can actually contextualize learning onto a topic that a kid is really interested and motivated by. And so I also hadn't really been exposed to homeschooling until I was a young adult. In the Bay Area, especially in California, there's not really a ton of exposure to homeschooling. Certainly, there's a fairly negative perception of it within most people's minds in the Bay Area. That's totally untrue. I met through my wife's family, who many are homeschooled. I met some of her cousins who had been homeschooled, and I was honestly surprised to meet wonderful, conscientious, compassionate, highly educated, extremely intelligent people who had been homeschooled, and that changed my perception and really kind of opened me up to, hey, maybe this is the right solution to improving outcomes for kids. And so then through conversations with Jonathan and through exploring this space and building SmartPath together, I'm more convinced than ever that the best course of action to helping kids and making sure that kids have the best opportunities available for them is to basically enable this industry to meet their needs and simplify the process of creating an educational path for families.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting to see kind of how the perception has really changed. And obviously a kid like you could have really benefited from having a more customized, tailored education. But hey, that's what we're talking about today. So
Yep.
um, so you guys met at a VC event. I would love to just talk about how you came up with the idea of SmartPath. Can you guys walk us through the moment? What sparked the conversation and made you guys realize that this was something worth pursuing?
Yeah, absolutely. So, like I mentioned, my wife and I have been involved in home education for a few years. So it seems like an idea, like I should have had this multiple years ago, right? I felt that pain then, but it wasn't something that really, I thought about like, hey, there should be a solution, until we joined this residency program, and had actually been looking at some business ideas in other industries, but did an exercise on just looking at, hey, let's look at some really large market opportunities, healthcare, education, like things that touch billions of people throughout the world. And, I picked education and just started digging into it. And then that's where the light bulb went off. Like, hey, wait a minute. We had this concern and confusion when we were going through this process of trying to figure out, like, what else can we do for our kids? Because what we're doing now isn't working. And wow, when you start looking into it, there's a ton of different options available. How do we find the right one? And it's an important decision. It's your child's education, your child's welfare, something you care deeply about. So at that point, it's like, I'm pretty sure, like, I can't possibly be the only parent who is feeling this and having these pain points. So maybe there's something more here. And through conversations with Robert, he had similar interests, like, wow, yeah, I think maybe there is something here. And so we just started digging into it, doing some market research, realized, yeah, there's a lot of growth happening in this space. A lot of other parents that are feeling these same pain points. We started talking to our homeschool networks and interviewing parents, got the same answers, like, wow, I wish there was a solution like this, 2 years ago when we were looking at this. Anecdotally, my wife gets inquiries several times a month from friends of friends who are considering moving from one type of schooling to another, and heard what we were doing and said, I need help. Like, can someone help me? So just seeing like how many other parents were out there going through this process really kind of motivated me to say, let's try to build a solution, see if there's something here that you can build a business around and help a whole lot of parents at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. And Robert, what are your thoughts, your perspective on this?
Yeah, I mean, so I saw Jonathan's presentation on billion touch point business, and it piqued my interest. I was also just kind of generally curious. I think we initially started kind of discussing. I think I just had some general questions about homeschooling. I was interested at a personal level and wanted to learn more about your experience and your family's experiences. Um, and then as we started digging into it, I think what was most surprising to me, and one of the more compelling reasons to go build a business in this space is as we started exploring kind of what the landscape looks like in the home education space. It's surprising how underserved this group is, right? So you have this whole 10 to 12% of all kids in the United States, and you look at the type of or the level of support that this group has, and it's relatively non-existent compared to other industries. I mean, there's some really good digitized coursework out there. There's some really interesting solutions around like micro schools and one-day academies. But then when you compare it to really any other industry and think about the level of product development and service development that's gone on, it's a totally underserved industry. And so, for me, what's interesting is that, we're in a position where we can say, hey, actually, this is a whole group of people that basically have been neglected and ignored by kind of the startup and venture capital industry historically, and we can come in and actually go build some stuff that gives them, the same level of support and tooling that really any other customer segment expects in 2024. And so I think that's a really cool opportunity, and I'm super motivated by the kind of moral piece of improving homeschooling access. And so I think it's a really interesting opportunity, and that's what got me super excited in the beginning. Say, hey, we can go kind of redefine this category and really improve people's access and experience.
So let's talk about where you're at with SmartPath today. What's the latest with the platform, and how has that been progressing?
Progressing well. So, we have a test product out there for a curriculum matcher product that helps match parents and their child situation up with the right sort of educational opportunities. Got really good feedback on that, and we're very close to having a real version of that product launched I know Robert's been taking the lead on building that out and getting it launched. So yeah, let's see where we're at, Robert.
Yeah, so I mean, I think when we built the initial MVP, it was really a simple no-code solution. Really, we wanted to test or at least validate, could we quickly deploy a product that actually gives good results and gives families, a resource that they can rely on. And I think the initial feedback was and results were really strong, right? So I remember that Jonathan was doing an interview with a friend who was homeschooling in Florida, I believe,
Mm-hmm.
who had a 13-year-old, and so we ran a test profile in our initial product for this person's kid, and so and we did this prior to the interview, and so actually during the interview the friend mentioned, hey, yeah, it's actually really in Florida, it happens to be really specific, the math requirements. So there's only a handful of courses that you're allowed to choose from in Florida if you're doing homeschooling. And the one that they recommended as being best for their kid is actually the one that our curriculum builder came back as being recommended for their kid's profile based off of what we entered. And so I think when we saw those initial results, it basically told us, hey, we're onto something here. We can have something that's reliable and clear. So from there, we then set about going and building all of the other features and quality of life improvements that you would expect from a polished product. So, having user profiles, user caching, the ability to interact with the builder and say, hey, actually, can you give me a different result for science, or can you give me an in-person course result for geometry so that my kid can go learn in person with other kids once a week, right? So we started to build in all that kind of flexibility and functionality. And we're really excited to deploy that. I think it's going to be a really amazing, polished product to launch with, much more than I think most startups are launching their products. But we wanted to make sure that for something as important as education, it needs to be something that people can feel comfortable and that they know they can rely on. And so for us, setting a really high bar for that initial product launch was extremely important. Through this, what's been really interesting is that a lot of the underlying tech that we've been building, in terms of cataloging the courses that are out there, in terms of understanding the different dynamics in the industry, it actually makes us, through building the infrastructure to give quality results in the curriculum builder, it gives us the foundation to go build other really impactful tools. So, for example, looking at potentially a course marketplace, looking at, we would even consider doing something like a tutor marketplace, being able to really understand the user and then understand how to match them effectively, and then having that wealth of data that we've put together around what actually exists in the marketplace. That actually just enables us to go launch other products that people have highlighted that they want. So that's, I think, super exciting.
Yeah, that's
Yeah, and
been
it
one of the
sounds
really interesting things about the whole process is, right, we started off with this really discrete issue or problem that parents were having, and like, how do I find what's best for my kid? But as we built out that product and started talking with more parents, it really kind of hit us that you know home educated children are, and parents are looking for excuse me, the same sort of experience that someone in, say, the public schools would be looking for. And it's not just academics, it's extracurricular activities, or maybe they need some additional help, tutoring for certain sorts of subjects, college coaching. It's the full educational experience. It's not just academics. And parents we were talking to were mentioning how, like, that was, those sorts of things were, they were also looking for that too. It's not just the curriculum, but how do I find the right sort of activities for my children? How do I find groups, the homeschool archery club that's nearby that I had no idea existed, but my child might love that. How do I discover that and get my kid involved in it? And so that really gave us some ideas for, wow, this we're not just building one discrete tool. I think there's an opportunity to build out a suite of tools or a platform or whatever it is to help parents through that entire journey, from academics all the way through to college preparedness and college admissions, if that's what they and their children decide that they want to go to.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the fact that you guys have spoken with almost 100 homeschool parents at this point just shows you're working to provide value, to every step of their education journey. So if anyone listening has any ideas or thoughts about what could be helpful, please don't hesitate to reach out. They would love to speak with you.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I always love to hear
Yeah.
people's experiences. It's fun and educational, and just really enjoy meeting those people.
Yeah, I mean, I think what's been really interesting too about doing all these interviews with parents is that, as I think I touched on this earlier too, but as they highlight the challenges and pain points that they have, we keep going back to like, well, I can't believe nobody's really made something to address that yet. And so that's what's been really fun about this is it's there's the initial wedge product that we talk about, that the curriculum builder, but there's just so much more. There's so many other pain points that actually, because we're building this foundational tech, we can go address those pretty easily too. And so, people have pain points, tell us, and we'll probably go build something to make that easier for you. Yeah, I think what's really interesting about the curriculum builder, I forgot to touch on this earlier, is that through these interviews, we found that parents are spending between 10 to 14 hours per kid per semester going and finding the curriculum that they wanted to teach their kids. And so we felt, okay, that sounds pretty painful. A lot of times people would go do research. They would maybe find some outdated reviews website, typically with only a handful of reviews, or they would go to a Facebook group, multiple Facebook groups. And then in the end, you're really just kind of asking a stranger for advice. And so we really felt, okay, that sounds like a really rough process to deal with. Let's try and trim that down. And so, we've taken that 10 to 14 hour process and simplified it down to about 5 minutes for the parents. That's in terms of reaching kind of the requirements. So for example, does it meet state accreditation standards? Does it meet their kids' objectives in terms of getting into an accredited university? So we're able to match accreditation in terms of college courses, but in the high school kind of time framework. And yeah, so we're able to do all of that, but simplify the information seeking period and reduce that time spent. And so then the parents actually can just spend more time making an informed decision. And I think that's really the key value proposition that this wedge product offers, is that you don't have to waste all this time just figuring out what's out there. We're going to help you do that, and then just help you make the best informed decision possible.
Yeah, it frees up time for you to go more in depth with a couple options, right? So when you're asking those strangers or friends of friends for advice on what they did, right? Every child's different, right? So something that may have worked for someone else's child might not be best for you. So you're going to talk to multiple people to try to get their opinions. But the quicker you can get to a narrowed list of options that you'd like to consider, the more time you have to spend talking about those options with other people. And so, that's one of the key value props that parents have told us is, it's not that, they don't enjoy talking with other homeschool parents and getting opinions. It's just, there's so much information. No one has time to talk to 100 different people to try to figure it out. You got to cut that list down quickly and then go deep on a couple options to figure out if it's going to work for you and your child.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been quite a journey so far from what it sounds like. And so, every startup faces its fair share of challenges. Have there been any hurdles that you guys have encountered and had to overcome, and have they changed, the direction of the company? Anything you can share about that?
We're pretty early, so I don't know if they've changed the direction of the company. But one hurdle is just the perception of homeschooling, especially among in the investor space. It's not a market that any have really looked at or considered. And you look at the typical age of investors, and right, it's been 15, 20, 30 years since they've been in high school. And typically that's when your frame of reference is for when you're looking at what is homeschooling? Oh, well, when I was in high school, this was homeschooling, right? And you think about it, you're like, yeah, but that was 25, 30 years ago. Like, a lot has changed in 25 or 30 years. And, most people, including investors, they had no reason to look into homeschooling during that time, right? It just wasn't wasn't something you did research on. So that they go back to that 30-year-old frame of reference and think, wow, it's really small, super niche, like it's not a lot of spend there, like all things that are no longer true. And so that kind of overcoming that perception and helping investors see, like, one, it is by far the fastest growing area in education. Public and private school have been declining for years. Homeschooling is taking off. Right? There's legislation going through in a number of more states. Potentially half the U.S. states will offer ESAs to support homeschool or home education. It's only going to get bigger, and there are no tools to help parents through that process. Right, so some of it's educating investors, which is never an easy thing to do, but just kind of helping overcome that perception has been a big challenge.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I was at an investor event a couple of weeks ago in San Francisco, and San Francisco is not exactly an area that's super, where the average resident will be particularly familiar with homeschooling. And so, I'm at this event, and I get asked by an investor, "Hey, like, what are you working on?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm working on homeschooling. We want to simplify access, create systems that allow families to manage their journey better and easier, and with more controlled outcomes." And his eyes just kind of glazed over initially. But then, we start, luckily we dug into it a little bit more. And I mentioned, yeah, it's about 10 to 12% of all kids, K through 12. It's 6 million kids in the United States. That's a non-insignificant number of people. It's actually it's very important that we make sure that these people are supported as well as possible. And then suddenly, that sparked conversation where he said, "Wow, I really didn't." He's like, "As soon as you said homeschooling, my eyes, I kind of checked out." And I was like, "I saw it." I saw your eyes. Your eyes kind of roll into the back of your head, and luckily we were able to have more of a discussion from there. But it was really interesting, even just in that context, seeing him this investor immediately recognize, "Wow, this is a total blind spot," right? And I think that's what's really exciting about what we're doing, is that this is a large number of people, large number of citizens of our country that are underserved by the private sector currently, and we have an opportunity to go, bring the level of this level of service to them, where we can go create awesome products that they'll hopefully love, and continue to iterate on those products to make sure that they're served as well as possible.
Yep.
Yeah, and it sounds like the industry is growing a lot in recent years. So you might find someone in California or in San Francisco specifically that's homeschooling.
Yeah, charter schools.
Oh, yeah.
The charter school movement is huge in the Bay Area, especially in Southern California as well. Like Temecula, Orange County, San Diego all have pretty big homeschooling organizations or charter schooling organizations. So, there's certainly some parallels between the two, and the need is there, I think, and so people are starting to feel that, and especially when we look at the kind of future of this market, about 60% of aspiring Gen Z parents in a 2023 survey said that they would prefer to homeschool their kids compared to public or private school. So that, to me, is a pretty strong signal this isn't slowing down, and that people are looking for alternatives. And so let's just make it as easy as possible to use those alternatives.
Absolutely. Jonathan, this one's more for you, but do you have any advice for parents who may be considering homeschooling but are unsure about where to start?
Sure. Go to SmartPath. No, I mean, really, it's a personal decision. So, I mean, don't make a rash decision about it, but definitely take a look at it and dig in to see what options are available, because there's a good chance that if you haven't kept up on the space, things are vastly different from when your last experience was with, homeschool or homeschoolers. So maybe like when you were in high school. There's concerns about, hey, do I need to be an expert in all these different subjects? Am I going to have to do the teaching? Are my kids going to be isolated in their room for hours on end with no other social interactions? Right? I mean, sure, that could happen if you wanted to, but no one really wants that for their kid. It's really easy to not have that sort of experience. Right? There are plenty of options where someone else is doing the teaching, particularly when you get to high school subjects, right? I'm not going to teach calculus. Like, sure, I know calculus if I go back and relearn it, but I'm not going to relearn it, and I don't want to teach it. Right? But there's plenty of opportunities to find other people who could teach that to my children outside of a public school environment. And there's co-ops that are available where it's kind of almost like a school environment, except it's not. It's all directed by, we're choosing the subjects, we're choosing the teachers. We just happen to, bring them to a building where, they'll sit in a class 2 times a week for an hour and a half, kind of like a college class with other kids, and they get to interact and do group projects and have that sort of experience. So, but that might not be right for other kids, right? There's full online programs. There's just a number of different options. So I would really think about like what is working for your children and your family. Like why do you want to homeschool? And it's more than just like, what do you not want it to be? Because what I've seen is, there's usually some trigger that if someone's moving from, say, a public school experience, there's some sort of like negative trigger that, hey, that sort of experience cannot happen anymore for my kids, whether it's bullying or you name it. Like they're running away from something, which is good, like that you're trying to find something else. But don't just jump into something else because it's just, hey, it's going to be better because it does not have what was negative before. There's a lot of positive aspects that you can layer on top of it. Like, do you need flexibility for your family? Are you looking to take, educational family trips during the week in the off season? Like those are the sorts of things that you can do as a homeschooler that you can't when your children are on this rigid calendar of 5 days a week during the school year. They have to be there, or the truancy officers are going to show up. Like you just have opportunities to do a lot more. So look at what that might be. Like, what do you want that experience to be? And you can build it. So, but like, I mean, it's kind of a long answer that highlights there's a lot of different options out there, which is part of what we're trying to solve. So of course, we want to be a resource for that, but there's plenty of other resources out there that, if you're interested in looking at homeschooling, just start diving in and doing research and find some people in your local communities or Facebook groups or elsewhere to start talking to get a multiple opinions, right? Because you're going to hear a lot of different opinions, but just keep in mind, like every family's different, every child's different. So collect all that information and try to filter it through whether it's right for your family or not.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it sounds like the personalization, that's a big aspect of it. It's creating your own
for sure.
style.
Yeah. I mean, now you have options. So just because, okay, well, there's, if I'm homeschooling them, they're not going to be bullied. Great. That's a really good reason to not have them in the public school if that was what was going on and it wasn't being addressed. Right. But now it's not like, well, now they're just going to sit in their room and do online classes for 6 hours a day. Like you have options to do a whole lot of other things that your children might react to better or learn better. So now, like, what are those opportunities? Like, do you want them to, start their own business? Do they go help out on at a dairy farm for 2 hours a week? Do they volunteer at the community shelter? Like, what other things can you add on that they would really enjoy that you couldn't do when you were in that old environment?
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely think a lot of parents are, I'm sorry, I definitely think a lot of parents are kind of, to your point, a lot of them are kind of running from something or some poor experience they had where they were underserved by the public education system. But when they get into homeschooling, what they kind of unlock is wow, I can kind of, if my kid really knows that they want to be a veterinarian, for example, right? Like they can go do 4-H, they can go do an apprenticeship, they can take courses, they can learn courses that are contextualized around that interest, right? So I think that's what parents, once they kind of dip their toes in, realize that they can unlock is, oh wow, my kid has, they kind of know what they want to do. They want to be a fireman, they want to be a veterinarian, they want to be a lawyer, a doctor, whatever, right? But you can actually then go create kind of that journey for them with a significantly higher degree of customization than you're ever going to get in a public school. And so, the reality is every kid is different. Jonathan, you highlighted that, right? Every kid is completely different. Why are we completely standardizing how we teach them? Yeah. Let's go figure out what each kid is passionate about. And with homeschooling, you can actually create a course selection that allows that kid to go pursue their dreams and not, learn to basically sit still in a classroom when they're not interested in the topic. It's, we don't do that in the real world either, right? Like most people go and they work in a field that they're interested in. why wouldn't we, shape education after that? It seems pretty obvious.
Yep, a lot of young boys have energy, so sitting in a classroom all day isn't necessarily the right option for some.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
Um,
go. The amount of times I had to go take a lap when I was in high school or when I was in middle school and elementary school, it's like, um, but the good teachers would be like, "All right, just go do a lap around the field, then come back, and you can sit." But in the end, why not pick a course that I'm actually interested in?
yeah. So the SmartPath platform uses AI. Some people, parents may have concerns about the use of AI with helping select curriculum. What do you guys have to say about that, or is there any more information you could share?
Yeah, I mean, so we're not using AI to do actual teaching, right? We're helping do matching, and it's something that it's something that AI is really good at, is helping with things like initial research, right? So a lot of people maybe have used Chat GPT, and you ask it for, give me 10 ideas for this topic I want to write a blog post on, right? And it's really good at kind of ideating that and then helping you narrow down those options. Right. But then when it comes to actually writing it, maybe you want to write it yourself. Right. So when you're doing research for things like curriculum matching, like if you have a profile of your family, like ages of your children, their interests, cost constraints you might have, whether you want in person or virtual experiences, it does a really good job of taking all those variables and looking at this giant database of what's available and making matches. Right. And that's so it's not really, I think some of the worry with AI is like, hey, there's this unknown bias that is inserted into it. When you're just doing matching like that, there's no bias there. It's just doing matching that you as a human would do, except AI can just do it better and faster and come up with those few options at the end that are, hey, here's what, if you had an infinite amount of time and infinite amount of information resources, these are the answers you would have came up with too. We're just helping you get there faster. Now, whether that's specifically right for your family, like now it's up to you to spend that time that you just saved digging into, okay, of these two options, like just confirming that these are right and figuring out like which one might work, and if something's changed, you can change one of those variables. AI can really quickly come back with a new recommendation. So I think that's where the benefit is just saving a lot of time up front in this process.
Yeah, just to add on to that, I mean, what we've seen is that over the past couple of years, with advances in technology, the rate at which educational content is being created is accelerating, exponentially, right? And so there's already probably 100,000 different courses out there. That number is just going to keep going up and doubling and doubling and doubling and doubling. And so as a parent, it's going to become even more time consuming and with more optionality out there to decide, okay, what are the right courses? And so, with the tools that we're building, we're not telling you, we're not taking that decision making process away from the parent. We're just filtering out everything that doesn't apply to your kid. And
Mm-hmm.
so you don't have to spend hours, looking at options that you're never going to choose anyways because they don't meet basic requirements that you already understand. And so we can simplify and speed up that process for you considerably.
Yeah, well, okay. That's good to know. Just looking forward at what's next for SmartPath, can you share anything about what's next? Any upcoming features that people should be excited about?
Yeah, I mean, I think I talked a little bit about it earlier. The vision is kind of to make homeschooling more accessible for all families. And but part of that is that what is homeschooling, what is home education, and it's not just the academics, it's the entire experience. So beyond just helping connect parents with the right courses or curriculum, like there's other things that they would like to have as part of that experience that they're also doing research on, whether it's tutors or extracurriculars or college coaching, or some parents want a homeschool advisor to talk to a couple times a year just to have an expert give them advice. Right? How do you find those people? Right. So we want to help be able to make those matches and connect people with all the resources they need throughout that home education journey.
Yeah, totally. And I think even, immediately through building out the database that we needed to create anyways to do the to create reliable curriculum matches. Something that we can really quickly turn on after this initial launch is the ability for parents to leave reviews about courses that their kids take. And so, you know, what we've seen is that a lot of parents go to Facebook groups anyways and say, "Hey, has anybody's kid taken this specific course?" And they'll share a link, and then they might get one comment back, but typically it just goes kind of unanswered. Um, think of it as like a Yelp almost, or a quality trusted review website, where parents can get that peer feedback and see what did other parents like about this. How similar is their kid's profile to my kid's profile? Like, do they share the same learning style? How do they feel about the level of involvement from the parent? Is the parent with this course needing to do more teaching, or is it more they're an administrator and then the program does most of the teaching? And so those are all the things that parents are asking for. And so our plan is to launch a marketplace feature like that very soon, after the curriculum builder. But then, yeah, the sky's the limit, right? I mean, I think, our approach has very much been talk to parents, understand what they need, understand what them and their kids want, to simplify this process for them. And then we'll go build it. So, it's very much, we're in service of the customer. We're also in service of the other people in this industry. So there's a lot of amazing companies building amazing content for families out there. We want to increase their ability to have outreach, right? So if you're making amazing content on reading and writing, we want to save you some marketing budget, basically, and we want to make it really simple for people that are going to succeed, for kids who are going to succeed with your coursework, to find it, and feel confident that they're going to benefit from it based off of the experiences of other families and other kids who are similar to them, who have tried your courses as well. So we really see that our job is to service kind of both sides of this industry. It's the people creating the content and providing the services, and the people who are using them.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say like our core customer is the parents, right? I mean, it's really the kids, but we're not marketing to the kids. It's the parents who are kind of crafting this educational journey for their kids, and that's who we're serving. So anything we can do to help make their experience easier, right? And some of that is, working with the curriculum providers or creators of educational content, right? There's a lot of good stuff out there, right? And more being created every day. Some of that is relevant to some parents, some isn't, right? But as that pool gets bigger and bigger, it's harder for parents to find what is going to work. It's also harder for providers to find the parents and families that would really enjoy and benefit from their product. So how can we help quickly make those matches, where both parties are happy? One's like, wow, I didn't know this educational tool on personal finance existed. My kids love it. This is awesome that I found it. And, that provider is like, wow, I'm so glad I found these parents, because now, right, I've built a business where I can, helping people with this course. Whereas before, like, I couldn't find those people, right? Running Facebook ad campaigns and spending a lot of money, just throwing marketing budget out there to try to find people. Whereas, with something like SmartPath, it can be very targeted. Like, we can help you find those people really quickly.
Absolutely. To our listeners, thank you for tuning in to this first episode of SmartPath Conversations. If you're interested in learning more about SmartPath, you can look up www.smartpath.school. Follow us on social media for the latest updates. And if you're interested in speaking with our co-founders, Jonathan and Robert, we would love to hear any feedback, any ideas you have, and how we can support you. Until next time, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.